Welcome back in live to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Week 6 was a doozy. We went about even. I think we ended up going 2-2 with a push. Michigan unfortunately couldn't cover that 3. Oklahoma with a godly cover. Wake Forest was a heartbreaker. Up 7 with less than 2 minutes left. Syracuse pinned inside their 5. They marched on to force overtime.
That's unforgivable.
A very fun week, very, very fun week of football. We're moving on to week 7. Not the best slate for just a pure college football fan, but there are some games where we think we can make some money off of. We're going to kick it over to Dill. You're going to give us your lock, your favorite pick of the week.
Now, this just seems like one of the all-time easiest picks, but UCLA money line as a 1.5-point underdog to Washington seems absolutely insane to me. I've watched Washington now play twice, once against Michigan, once against Oregon State. And I'll tell you, I think there might not be a worse offense in the Pac-12 and potentially in the country than that Washington team. Like, they really were wildly inept. I mean, Oregon State is not a great team, and they really shut them down. It doesn't make sense to me. I think UCLA is really pretty good, and yeah, I think that seems like an easy money line dog. Only losses to Arizona State and Fresno, which hurts, of course, but that was coming off a big win against LSU, and in a sense, I can forgive it a little bit, especially because Fresno is actually a pretty solid team. Frankly, probably would be maybe favorites against Washington, quite honestly. So, yeah, I love that pick. I'm still a big UCLA fan. I think what they can do on the ground is very impressive, and their defense is going to definitely give them major problems on Washington, just as Michigan's high pressure defense did too. So I really like that underdog money line for UCLA.
Yeah, from a matchup standpoint, we saw Michigan run it all over Washington. We saw Oregon State have success running the ball in Washington. UCLA with those running back duos and Britton Brown and Zach Charbonnet, you got to like that matchup there. I worry that they might be looking past and kind of looking towards that Oregon game next weekend at home. That being said, I still like the pick. I agree with you. It's not my favorite pick of the week, but I like the pick.
I mean, UCLA is not a look-ahead team yet. Like, they're not a team that's winning every game by any stretch of the imagination as of right now. So it's like
a top 10 team coming into your stadium, though. You know, like using that how good there.
I think looking ahead would be like how Bama would treat a team before they go play Georgia or something.
Yeah,
or,
that's right.
I mean, like, I guess UCLA could be looking ahead, but they don't have they got to think about every game to win, and they have to know that unless they're wildly unaware of what type of team they are.
Yeah. I'm going to head over to the SEC, kind of a conference I like to bet on. I feel like it's a little bit easier to project matchups than the Pac-12, which just is like the Wild West out there. I'm going Ole Miss -2.5 on the road against Tennessee. Tennessee's offense has been cooking. Their defense can barely stop a nosebleed. Ole Miss is going to throw it all over the yard on Tennessee, -2.5. I love on the road. Matt Corral's taking care of the football. 0 interceptions on the year. I had him as my QB1 in the 2022 NFL draft. Some great value there. I also am looking at that over-under at 84, which is just so high. I don't hate the value taking the under there just on the principle. But I'm sticking with the Ole Miss covering 2.5. Though I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, and I'm just like, when you say Tennessee's offense has been cooking, it's been cooking for 2 straight games. I mean, they only put 14 on Florida. Not a great defense by any stretch of the imagination.
Missouri.
And they've hammered 2 teams, Missouri and South Carolina, and those are bad football teams. Like, you look at Missouri's defense, couldn't sniff stopping Boston College, and that's a run-only offense. So, yeah. I mean, South Carolina, as well as anybody, is just atrocious. So, yeah, they're beating the wheels off some really bad teams, but Ole Miss, like, I know they got hammered a little bit by Bama, but that's really not a bad team. And I don't think that line seems like way too low to me as well.
Yeah. Okay. What's your next favorite pick? We got UCLA. Did you ended up going with the money line on UCLA?
Oh, easy. I love the money line on that.
What's your next pick?
Next pick I'm kind of a fan of is Arizona State to beat Utah in a straight up
matchup.
So that, yeah, and we just talked about it. I think Utah is getting a little bummed from beating a USC team that just seemed like I kind of said it last week. It just seemed like they were destined to lose it. USC is, in my mind, very Nebraska-like football team, loses some real stinkers at times, and it just smelled like a bad situation for USC. Maybe they started to think they were good, and after kind of coming back a little bit with the new interim guy, and obviously like they're still not a particularly good team. And I think Arizona State, like their only loss was in a pretty close game to BYU, and BYU is pretty tough. Like, and I thought that game was very competitive. If the Arizona State wideouts make a couple plays in that game, that's probably a pretty easy win for Arizona State. And barring they had the fumble and then the second fumble after Algier stripped it from Arizona State's defender. So like there were some things that just seemed like destiny was kind of calling for us in that BYU game. So
I think
I really do like it.
Plays that game on the road against a very good BYU team. I think
great environment too, frankly. Like that's
Arizona State will win that game more times than BYU out of 10. Everything seemed to kind of go BYU's way. I like this Arizona State team. Jaden Daniels is an absolute playmaker.
Jaden Daniels is like incredibly good.
I have a little too much juice on the Pac-12 for my liking, but I like both picks.
We do have some.
I'm gonna go to the Big Ten now. We got a Nebraska, Minnesota, kind of a battle of average Big Ten teams. We were at the Nebraska game. They hung in there. They got down.
Nebraska, not average. That's harsh for Nebraska. They're like
that's probably
playing teams tough.
Yep. I mean, they're still trying to remove themselves from the stench of the Illinois loss, but since that loss, they've actually been really, really solid. Playing Michigan State tough, playing Oklahoma tough, playing Michigan tough.
Yeah, 3 brutal losses for them. Honestly, all games they could have won for sure.
But realistically, I really like the matchup. Minnesota likes to just pound the ball on the ground. They have a ginormous offensive line. That being said, you noted it pre-show, they don't really have a workhorse anymore. And Nebraska is about as hard of a team as you'll find to run between the tackles. They got some dogs at that nose tackle, D tackle spot, some really tough, hard-nosed linebackers, box linebackers. I don't think Minnesota is going to have that much success running on Nebraska. Adrian Martinez, I like that offense. That second half, specifically the third quarter, they played Michigan. A lot of misdirection, using Adrian Martinez kind of outside the pocket. I liked what I saw from them. I think they'll be able to put up points, and I think they'll be able to stop Minnesota a decent amount. I like laying Nebraska -4.5 on the road.
Yeah, and just to go further on Nebraska, like they also have 2 corners who I thought were incredibly good. Like they really took away a lot of what Michigan was doing on the edge.
I love how those corners were.
100%. It seems to me like they're going to be able to deal with Ottman Bell, who is really the only real weapon on offense that Minnesota has left. And if they can just stick one of those corners on them, realistically, I think they both can play at a really high level. I think that's just a tough matchup. And I think Minnesota has lost a lot of juice from 2 years ago when the boat was rowing and PJ Fleck kind of had his initial rah-rah kind of nonsense going on. I just don't, that stuff doesn't last. It seems like the air is falling out of that program pretty rapidly. So
tell you how surprised I am of after the 2019 season, they looked so good. They're returning pretty much everyone from that team. They were a top 25 team coming in. They get trounced by Michigan. They're in the COVID era, bad Michigan team. And they go on to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and they're returning a lot of those guys again. and they're horrible. Tanner Morgan looks really bad. I mean, against not a good Purdue defense, 9 of 18, 169 yards and a touchdown. Pretty pedestrian. They don't throw it. They keep the ball.
I mean, he's lost a lot of the weapons. He kind of had a really good team. The year they were good when they beat Penn State, he had a lot around him. I mean, he had 2 NFL wideouts in Bateman and was it Tyler Johnson or something? I forget the guy's name, but the other wideout was very good as well. So
that was in 2019. Yeah, they had some.
It's like number 6 or something. I forget, but
I think you're right. The big guy.
But they had 2 guys who were really playing at a high level. They were hammering the ball kind of at will, and they were playing pretty good defense. So I think he's not a guy who I think can carry a football team like people maybe thought he could because he came on the scene with that team and played good ball. But yeah, he doesn't seem like he's anywhere near that level at this point. And
okay.
Yeah, they just don't have a good enough team around them, and Nebraska's good. Like, I love Nebraska. I think
they've lost a couple tough ones, but they're a good team. I honestly I don't have a ton of great picks. These 4 picks I all agree with. I like your 2 picks. I'm gonna move on to kind of picks that I wouldn't like I don't love, but I'll probably end up taking because I'm a sucker for the juice. And I feel like I'm the ultimate square for taking this, but I'm thinking about taking Clemson minus 13.5 on the road tomorrow night at Syracuse. Clemson's coming off a bye, getting some guys back healthy. I hope, I'm hoping as a Clemson better that offense kind of figures itself out. Defense gets healthy. Syracuse, I would be the first one to admit I was wrong about Syracuse coming in. I thought they were going to be really bad. Garrett Schroeder. Am I saying his name right? Garrett Schroeder, the quarterback?
Yeah, it's Schrader. I don't know.
It's Schrader. Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker are a pretty dynamic backfield. Clemson's a hard team to run it on. They got some good linebackers, some good D linemen. If they can score, I like them covering 13.5. That being said, Clemson hasn't beaten a team by over a touchdown, an FBS team over a touchdown. So I don't love it, but I'm eyeballing it.
Yeah, you just keep wanting them to play good football. Like, when are they going to beat Clemson and start pumping teams by 30 like they generally do?
I'm thinking this is the after the bye week, they get their legs under them, get fresh. And Syracuse played a brutally tough game. A lot of short week, and a lot of plays were run in that Wake Forest game. Garrett Schrader was banged up late in the 4th quarter. I like the idea of it. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The one pick I actually kind of like this pick, frankly, but I kind of love Auburn to beat Arkansas on the money line. I think Arkansas kind of. What's that?
What's the money line?
The game line's 4.5, so probably plus 200-ish or something.
Plus 165.
Yeah, I mean, I like.
Don't give out money.
I'm not in love. Well, I'm looking at the spread line. I don't see that. I'm on the ESPN app, so it is what it is. But I think Auburn isn't great. I also think Arkansas is very much overrated at this point. I think they got exposed pretty good by Georgia, and I think there's you can lose to Georgia and look moderately respectable, and then you can get absolutely drubbed and you look like you're like Furman or something, like a team like that's in the FCS or something. So it's to me, I think Auburn I think Bo Nix is actually playing pretty decent ball. I think they have a stable of running backs that can really play in a defense that's not great, but probably good enough. So you give me a shot that Bo Nix makes a few plays and they can run the ball as Georgia kind of did on them. Yeah, I like this. I like this Auburn team enough to take them to beat Arkansas, who I think is riding a high that I don't think they really are about. I mean, really not a great defense. So
I think that you kind of noted the big point is I think Arkansas's defense is a little bit of a pretender.
Also, one thing they play that like 3-5 kind of system where they have 3 down linemen and a bunch of linebackers and safeties kind of playing. So I think that sets up well. Like Auburn might be able to run the ball okay, and if you can be patient and just grind them out, I think that's a decent formula to kind of give Arkansas problems because they don't give up big plays. Auburn doesn't make big plays. Bo Nix is not a big play pocket guy. He's better in the chaos. So I think they grind them down with a stable of running backs who have shown so far to play some really good ball. And I think he might be able to get an upset here and take that Auburn money line. So
yeah, it's not my favorite pick. I feel a little bit more comfortable taking the 5.5 just because I don't think there'll be a lot of points. I would struggle to see this game being more than one possession game. Both teams like to keep the ball on the ground. Both teams have a good rushing attack. That's kind of what I'm thinking about it. But I don't hate it. I want to talk. We can just like talk quickly and we'll end the show about just some other games that are happening. The Georgia-Kentucky, which I think the line's sitting at 21.5. I keep passing up on Georgia bets and they just cover because they're just so good.
wiping teams.
Again, I don't want to take – they're going on the road, I believe. So it's like I'm not laying 3 touchdowns against the top 15 team that plays good defense. That being said, they'll probably cover. They're just a phenomenal team. Florida LSU. Yep. I think Florida beats them, but I don't think I want to lay 11.5 on the road. Although I don't know how ruckus LSU environment will be now that team's just not good. And then what do you
those people? That's all they have. That's like all they have in that state in terms of sports. So I always think they're going to be bringing it, just like Nebraska and Michigan. Like those teams, they just always have big, rowdy fan bases. So
Michigan in that.
Yeah, dude. Michigan sells out every game, even when they're horrible through Rich Rod and freaking Hoke. So.
Well, it's funny that you said all the teams that don't have any NFL teams, and then you named Michigan at the end. I liked it.
Yeah, it's fair. That wasn't like, but they do only have the Lions.
Yeah, no, they always
that barely counts. But
they got loyal fans. Yeah, the Lions.
So yeah, I actually like. I hate LSU. I think they're one of the worst teams in the country.
Coach O got fired. You were right about him. You were not a fan of Coach O, and he's
looking. Are they gonna fire him? He's got like a 10-year deal, and he's getting paid a ton. So the buyout, no doubt, is disgusting.
Team's a joke right
now. What a screw up by the AD. It's like I get that they had to hire him because like the whole state, like, I mean, he was like the state's mascot and like, oh, prodigal son coming home,
he's literally.
And then he catches fire for 1 year, and now he's dragging him right to the dumps. So that's tough.
All right, last game I want to talk about before we jump off: Oklahoma State, Texas. That's a big Oklahoma State undefeated Big 12 team. I'm not gonna lie, I think they're pretenders. I don't love Spencer Sanders. I just don't think you can.
Oh, their offense is horrific, but they can run the ball though, dude.
And they play good defense. Like
in Texas is like obviously doesn't tackle a fly, so
Texas.
I don't actually like it. I almost feel like the line's not really right. I think at even it's like kind of where I think it maybe should be, if not slight favorites for Oklahoma State. So I actually don't hate the pick.
Like just money line sprinkle on Oklahoma State at plus 150.
Yeah, and just
so I don't want to take a spread there just because the points are going to come. 4 points is like I'd rather take the plus 160 there. You know what I mean? I guess my reasoning is like the Auburn Arkansas game is 5.5. This game is 4. But the Arkansas Auburn game, I think the points are going to be more at a premium, lower game, better defenses, and so I'd rather take the points there versus Oklahoma State. I'll just try to hit that plus 160.
No, that's what I mean. Like, line's not so bad just because. Does it make sense to you that Oklahoma State is 4-point dogs or whatever they? I mean, it doesn't to me. I don't think Texas is like great.
Texas coming off a brutal loss, but they showed they can move the ball. Casey Thompson is definitely the guy.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt, but like
I was not impressed with them when I watched them against Boise State. They're just a very one-dimensional team. Spencer Sanders is not good. They have a dog running back they feed.
he's sick.
One-dimensional is hard to, in my opinion. I'm not going to.
That's fair. I mean, now that I am like, they did play horrible. They didn't look like they could really move the ball at all against Boise besides long runs. Only thing is Texas will give you long runs. They've been giving everybody long runs. So
Oklahoma State should have lost that game against Boise State.
Spencer Sanders, he's playing horrible though. I don't know what his problem is.
I mean, he's so bad.
He can't throw, so that's a problem.
I mean, they ended up beating Baylor, but he threw 3 picks, and they just gave the ball to Jalen Warren 36 times. He only averaged 3.5 yards a carry. Low-key talking
a lot.
But in Texas, -4, but I don't
yeah, you're talking me way out of that game. So I mean, I'm not taking Texas just because
I don't bet on Texas.
I can't watch a team tackle that poorly that I'm rooting for. It makes me want to like throw up. So I would never take Texas again. It was agonizing watching them against TCU, but
they covered for the boys by a point. Because
barely,
just a grown man.
He's
what are the games you like before we get off? I'm done. I'm tapped out. To recap, UCLA money line, Ole Miss -2.5, Arizona State money line, Nebraska -4.5, and then we kind of have tentative ones on Clemson to cover 13.5.
One final game that I think is tantalizing is Alabama to cover 17 on Mississippi State. Like
shit kick them.
I get that Bama just lost, but this seems like a game they're going to be like, all right, we're not bad, and we're going to go hammer Mississippi State. And 17 is not a ton of points for what I kind of think Bama can do. Like maybe if you're getting up to like 24-ish, then that's a lot of points to cover on Mississippi State. But God, they can beat them by 3 touchdowns, I got to think. So,
and one other thing I'll add is that Bama needs to now not just
kill people. Yeah,
they need to start to impress. Because if you look at their resume, it's not as great as everyone thinks it might be. Beating that Miami team looks a lot less impressive than it was a couple weeks ago. They only beat Florida by 2 and looked like they could very easily lost that game. Now losing to A&M with their backup quarterback, it doesn't look great. So they need to start kind of running the table, beating people bad, and then they need to go beat Georgia.
Yeah, and they know that. I mean, this Bama team's no stranger to
the offense to just blow Mississippi State out of the water. That being said, I really just haven't been that impressed with Alabama. Like they had.
The defense is just bad. I don't get it. It will never make sense to me. But
we talked about it in the last episode. They just don't.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one though. But that's about it. You have anything else, or you good?
No, I think not a great. Again, like as you kind of mentioned, not a particularly exciting week, but
there's some games.
There's actually more games I like on the pick side of it than I kind of thought. But
I'll close out the show giving my brother credit. He was right on the Kentucky pick. They blew out LSU, and he was right on the Utah going and beating USC. Those are kind of our big disagreements. I didn't like either pick. I especially didn't like the USC pick, and they ended up winning. Utah ended up winning the 20. So.
And you're really giving it to me too. Oh, boy, Utah stinks.
Once in a while, I'll give my brother. He needs it.
That's ridiculous. When I tell you teams like Nebraska or USC are going to lose, like just listen to me because I know them. I know those blue bloods that stink. I know when they're in a bad spot. That's easy.
That's crazy.
It's just obvious.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for being with us, everybody. We will be back next week with kind of a recap, and we'll get into our week 8 picks, kind of a return back to some big games. We'll talk to y'all then. Let's go make some money this Saturday. Peace.